Shall I just go? Okay. No, carry on. Thanks to you all for joining us for this workshop about West Coast Energy Limited. Come in. You can't leave now because it would be awkward, having read the title, to decide to leave. Okay, thanks everybody for coming and for joining us for this workshop. And I'd like to welcome everyone who's with us in the room today, but I'd also like to welcome everyone who's joining us via the live stream. And I'd especially like to welcome our speakers who are with me here on the stage. So we have in the middle, Neil MacKinnon from Urras Oighreachd Ghabhsainn. On the end, we have Ivan Brown from Urras Oighreachd Bharabhais. And at this side, we have Donald MacKinnon from Urras Oighreachd Chàrlabhaigh. And big thanks to my colleague Ross, who is here to help keep the workshop running. And when we get to the point of questions from the audience, Ross will come to you with a roving mic. Because of the live stream and to ensure that everyone can hear, please use the mic and hold it very close to your face. So, and Meg is in charge of the live stream, so thank you very much. Now this session is all about sharing a case study about community landowners coming together and the power of collaboration. And the three community landowners have many similarities, but also they have many differences, and they've all come on very different journeys since buying their land. Ghabhsainn, Bharabhais and Carloway estates, they're all on the west coast of Lewis, and for full disclosure, I will share that I live on Ghabhsainn estate and I worked for many, many happy years with Carloway estate. And I have met all of these panellists once or twice before. Now we'll start by hearing from our speakers who are going to share their stories and their journeys. Donald will start by giving a short overview of how West Coast Community Energy Project got off the ground. He'll explain how the three community trusts became involved and talk through some of the key moments along the way. We'll then smoothly transition to hearing from Neil, who will share more of the technical details, including some of the trickier parts of the process and what it has involved. And then finally, Ivan will reflect on how the trusts have kept their communities engaged and on board throughout the journey, and he'll speak about how they've shared information, built support, and handled expectations and challenges as the project has developed over time. We will then open the floor to questions and discussion, and as it's quite a big room, please make sure you use the microphones. Plea again. We will be having a question and answer part of the session, but at the very beginning of that, before we go to it, as well as the three members of staff who work for the trusts, we have two directors from those trusts in the audience, so here is your due warning that the microphones are going to be coming to you for your reflections on the project too. So, you can't say I didn't give you a little bit of notice. So, we'll hand over now to Donald to kick us off.
Thank you, Sally. Right, I'll just leave it on that slide. Thank you all for coming to join us today. It's great to see so many people here interested in our project. As Sally said, I'm going to just kick off with a wee bit of the context, a bit of the background, and how this project sort of emerged. I feel like a bit of a fraud talking about this when it was Sally in her role that probably did most of this preparation work, but I'll give it a go anyway. So I was reflecting a wee bit on what we heard in the morning session from Lorne when he was talking about the initial steps for GIA and Storus when renewables were a key part of their initial journey and filling those bank accounts up at the start of the process. And like those trusts, when the feasibility studies were being done for the buyouts of the Bharabhais estate, Ghabhsainn estate and Carloway estates, renewables featured heavily. And renewables have always been that aspiration and goal for all three trusts, and seen as being key to achieving financial sustainability. But the trusts have had different successes, different tries at how to do renewables, and ultimately that journey has led us to this point where we're with this project now. Neil will talk a bit later about Ghabhsainn's experience and their success around renewables, and that expertise, and why that capacity has actually left us in this position where we can actually talk about doing a project like this. But for Bharabhais and Chàrlabhaigh, the situation's been slightly different, in fact very different. Bharabhais looked in the past at a project around direct supply to a local business in the area. Chàrlabhaigh did similar, explored a project where we were going to develop renewables to supply electricity to Scottish Water. Unfortunately, neither of these projects, is that something I'm doing? Or? Oh, I keep talking, okay. But neither of those projects came to fruition. There's also challenges for both Bharabhais and Chàrlabhaigh. In addition to that, for Bharabhais, the deal with the previous owner of the estate when the buyout was going through, there was a nasty clause put in the contract, which ultimately was crucial to the buyout progressing. But that means that 10% of gross revenues of any renewables project over 1 megawatt go to the previous owner of the estate. So that's a real disincentive for Bharabhais doing any renewables at scale. For Chàrlabhaigh, our local grid is a problem. Our distance from other grid connections would make projects prohibitive. We also are very fortunate to have some of the most important archaeological and historical sites in Scotland on the estate in the Callanish Stones and the Dún Chàrlabhaigh Broch, but those limit our potential for development in those areas. And then overarching, we have the constraint of the grid and the interconnector connection to the mainland. Following the announcement a couple of years ago that was actually going to go ahead, that's what spurred this project to get it going and moving it forward. But in the interim period, what had happened was, as a result of all of these different factors, all of these different challenges that the different trusts faced, we realised that actually working together and doing a collaborative project was the best way to realise developing a renewables project, particularly for Bharabhais and Chàrlabhaigh, but also for as a repowering option and an option for taking Ghabhsainn's renewable journey forward, was to do this together in partnership. So the project has been under development for several years now, and had been in various stages of progress through as grid connections and uncertainty around the interconnector bumbled along. But now, with the certainty that the interconnector to the mainland is going ahead at 1.8 gigawatts, it's been all hands to the pump and focusing on making sure that this project is as viable as possible to secure a grid connection and to make sure that we can move forward. And that's where Neil comes in with all the detail and all the information on how we're actually going to do this. Thanks.
So I'll just give you a quick overview of where we are just now in the project. So as Donald has mentioned, the project is on Ghabhsainn estate land in the north of Lewis. If you've been there, very few hills and lots of wind, so it's the ideal location. And for various reasons, I suppose mostly historical, Ghabhsainn estate didn't have any conditions like the other name estates had. So there's a bit more of a free rein in the northwest of the island, and so we're looking at an area on Barbas Moor for this new development. So if you know Lewis, then it's an area which is near Barbas itself, on the main road going east. So we're looking at potentially 43 megawatts based on 9 turbines, which will be hopefully around the 5 megawatt mark. And we're working in partnership there, obviously. There's a company formed. We decided that we would do this last year and make a new entity. We don't know yet what this role will have. At the moment, it's a vehicle for moving ahead. We don't know whether in the future this will be maybe a parent organisation or whether it may be an operational one. And we're leaving it vague at the moment. It's just a kind of normal vanilla type organisation which has the 3 states as its members. So there's quite a lot of work done pre-COVID on identifying locations, and having looked at a whole range of different locations, we came up with the one which we're now working on, as I mentioned, on the Barbas Moor. And there's been quite a lot of work done with the village roundabout, so the township roundabout has rights over the area, over the moorland there. So we've been working with them to liaise with them and explain what we're looking at for about 5 years now, or so, 6 years maybe in total. So that's been going on in the background, and we did some consultation recently, which Ivan will maybe mention later on. And so the progress on the project, we've been working through various hurdles. We decided, first of all, that we had to inform ourselves about the ins and outs of the project, look at what the background was on the site, all the kind of the unknowns on the site, and understand a bit more about what might happen in the project in terms of the scale and access and so forth. So we've been doing initial works which CARES money helped us with, and that took basically from, I think it was April 2020 when the applications went in first of all, to completing these technical works about a year ago or so. And so it's been quite a long involved period. So we've come out of that with technical information now that we can use in the years ahead. The grid, as Donald has mentioned, was quite challenging, and we decided to go ahead with an application to SSEN last March. We didn't really know what was going to happen because there was all sorts of rumours about there being no capacity left on the grid. Even though we're having this huge investment in the grid, it was much more than anybody expected, but in the background there's a pipeline and there are lots of other wind farm projects in the area. So we were very aware that there was going to be a rush, and that's what happened. So around last March, April, we were receiving information that there's maybe no space left on the grid. Even though it's not going to be available for another number of years, there's been so much interest in it that we had to move. So we just went off and we put an application in. We got an offer in the middle of last year, which was a really good offer, very expensive, but a really good offer, which had timescales, costs, and all the information which you might expect. And also it laid out a whole range of actions that we had to fulfill. We also, because we're having an impact on the cable between Lewis and the mainland, we had to put in another application as well to NISO, who managed the grid nationally, and that offer went in as well in just after New Year, and we had an offer a number of weeks ago, which again looks really good, better than we thought, and we've avoided, it looks like anyway, we avoided the security kind of overheads and charges that we had feared, which would have been very expensive. And because of where we are now and the offer we had from SSEN, we started doing the survey work on the site in the autumn last year at risk ourselves. So we forged ahead with that. And some of that has been funded by Ghabhsainn Estate, some of it been funded by CARES more recently. So the challenge with CARES has been that we receive the funding in a period which is basically between August and the end of March, and then you've got to wait again for a new fund to open. So there's just been a recent announcement a number of weeks ago that the new fund for this year is open now. Applications have to be in by the end of next month. So here we go again, basically, but we're limited to the financial year end, and basically you've got to keep things going between the end of March and usually the middle of August. So that's been a bit of a headache, and we're trying to find others who can help us with the funding in the meantime. Critical to the grid at the moment is a land agreement, which we're working on just now. So just on the image there, you can see that the cable to the north between Lewis and the mainland hasn't happened yet, but there's already potentially no space left, and I think we might just have nicked that last amount of space on the grid cable. Annual charges for when you are operating are going to be much higher. That's going to be something which impacts on the revenue situation. And unlike where we were a number of years ago when Ghabhsainn did the initial project 10, 15 years ago, there's really no mechanism for helping any organisations like yourselves in the process now. And so we're very much on our own, dealing with competition from the likes of maybe SSE, MEN themselves and EDF and so forth. The funding for the revenue elements in the project, the subsidy which was available previously is no longer available, and we now have to go through an auction potentially in the future, and that's going to be a difficult situation. But we have hope at the moment, and the progress we have achieved so far anyway has been a bit more than we expected. So that's another thing which lies ahead of us at the moment. Development funding is a real headache. CARES has been vital, but piecemeal, and it's based on the financial year end. We have asked about loans, but there doesn't seem to be any availability of loans at the moment. The costs are indicated there as well. So the planning application cost is something like 400k roughly. Technical costs beyond that would be around £500,000 or so. We have approached these organisations, which I mentioned there. We haven't really had any responses back from anybody who can help us beyond what we've had initially from the CARES budget. CARES, I think, might run out somewhere along the way in the future, so we need to find other partners. We're hopeful that GB Energy will be available. The others tend to say that they'll help near the end of the project when all the technical information is available, when we have the grid agreements, a land agreement, and when we have the consenting as well in place. So there's quite a lot of potential partners who are holding off at the moment, and we're having to just work our way along the process. The costs to date have probably been about 150k or so roughly. CARES has paid for most of that. We've had a little bit of money from another organisation as well, and Ghabhsainn Estate has helped out over a few periods where we had a few gaps. So that's where we are at the moment. It's very ambitious, very challenging. Most people think we're totally mad. Why would we do this? And that's reflected both locally, regionally, and I think at national level as well. Community ownership of assets like this seems now to be no longer in vogue, and we are pushing quite a large rock up the hill at the moment, or so it feels anyway. But we are making progress despite that, and hopefully we can reach the end. What we have at the moment, Ghabhsainn Estate has got 3 turbines at the moment, producing roughly 500,000 a year on average. Ghabhsainn has got a workforce now of quite large. When I started about 2011, there was 3 people in the office. We're now up to 15, I think, at the moment. There's a grant scheme working within the area of 100k a year on average. We've got knowledge and skills, obviously, as has been mentioned already, and there are possibilities about repowering what we have at the moment, but there's no easy way forward there, so we are looking at that option as well. But the new project offers a bit more in terms of the scale of it and the partnership working, and I think opportunities that perhaps wouldn't be around if we were maybe just working on our own. So I'll hand over now to Ivan, who can maybe share with you about the consultation and support side of things.
Thanks, Neil. I'm going to make this short, as I've just been told to, so it's that's fine by me. Well, the 3 estates, as you've heard from Donald, we all had an aspiration to from the communities when we were doing the buyouts to have renewable energy. And so we've all just been always asked, when are we going to get our turbines? Like, I know I have been, Donald has been as well. And so this is great that we've been able to say to them now that we're working on a project now that we can, in the future, hopefully have income coming in through renewable energy. But the project itself began speaking with the common grazings on getting the land. Once the area that Neil showed you on the map there, that was identified as an area that could be used for our project. That, I know for Neil took probably a few meetings to get through to the common grazings that this was a good idea. I think by the end, when they were found out that they would get money out of it, that they thought, well, yeah, we'll go ahead with it. But for the rest of us, it was really at the start verbally just talking to people in the community. As we met them and they were asking about our renewables and how we're getting on with income and that. It was just really that until we had a project that we could present to them. And when we had that, we had community consultations in all 3 estates. They weren't as well attended as we would have hoped, but I think at the minute in Lewis, fatigue on consultations is happening because there's so many consultations going on that people wonder which ones they're at. So, but we've also had our display boards at stands, other events, so that's helping as well because we're just keeping going out to all these other events and showing the people our presentation boards, so as those who didn't want to go to a consultation, when they go to these other events, they see them, and that's what we'll keep doing. We'll just keep going out to these events. Challenges we've had, the biggest challenge we've had is offshore wind and developers, because on the island, a lot of the community on the west coast don't like ScotWind's proposal, and they thought that our project was because of ScotWind and N4. So we always have to explain to them that they're 2 different projects in total. That because we're having ours isn't because of the N4 project, the Spirit and the Mara project. And that's one of the biggest challenges we've got, and I'm probably in the estate that gets most of the flack about that, because the majority of the offshore wind farm will be on our coastline. But that's one thing we just have to keep explaining to people. I know sometimes we get fed up with it, doing it one after the other, but that's how we'll go, and we'll just keep going. How we consult with our communities will be through events, consultations, AGMs, just any way we can, just to keep the people up to date about what we're doing.
Thanks, Ivan, that's great. And we're now going to open the floor for questions and discussions. I do have a few questions ready, but is anyone on the floor want to start? Yeah, we've got somebody there. So if you can start by letting us know who you are and where you're from.
Thanks, guys. Great presentation. I'm going to provide what they're looking for. Basically, just between the rest and planning or part of the people are system turbines and articles people in the planning moment. So, what I'm interested is the capital to build these turbines, and we've got 43 megawatts. Roughly, the industry can suggest costs about million to per megawatt, per megawatt to build. So that comes up to 3 million. Where will that come from?
Any ideas? I think the challenges we're seeing is that there are quite a few funders, lenders around who are quite happy to be involved when you reach the end of the project and you need that last loan basically. So because of our experience, we have a bank that we work with at the moment, Traders Bank, who I think they would, if they were here, they would say they're very interested in final amount of money required in the project. The challenges I think I alluded to when I spoke was that the bits in between are getting very hard. And we need to find partners. So I don't think at the moment it's being a bit offhand perhaps, but I think when we reach the end, if we've reached the end of this, we'll have achieved so much that we won't have lenders lining up, but I think we will have a number out there who would be interested. And I think potentially there's more now available than when we did the turbines originally, when we really only had two then. There potentially might be more and different ways now of really funding projects. But I think the next 4 years or so, 5 years is going to be difficult.
There was a question up on this side. Oh, sorry, we'll go to Ailsa first since your mic is close to you.
Thanks for the presentation, really interesting to see how it's all come together. Have you had much support from the court on this? That might be really good. Donald, do you want to take this one?
So it's probably a mixed picture, I would say. I think in general, very supportive of the project and community energy going forward, but the ability to deliver or give us practical support has been limited. I think the board, for various reasons, has taken the approach that supporting the long-term commercial developments in Ireland has been their strategy, I suppose, for development of renewables. And ultimately, that has led to the situation where we're just now with the interconnector and massively increased capacity in what we expect capacity and what we able. So I think in general, yes, the Portugal community energy, but there is stuff when the commercial developments and then there's the practical financial system doesn't really work.
What more could they do? Assuming they're not going to have a 70 million, but is there other more things they could do to help move this project forward more smoothly that's not financial related?
I think that there's always more that can be done from a policy perspective and a lobbying perspective actually, and just actually meeting the case for developments like this. Just to reflect on what you was talking about there, in relation to financing the project, then it's about getting this across to as many people as possible. There's absolutely no reason that if we can get support to get this project to the point where it has a planning consent and it's developed, but anyway, that we can go to banks, to any other government, and finance project and development a little bit. When infinitely more benefits to the local community than benefits to them. And I think it's just that actually eliminating more back questions, like making sure that we've got other kind of voices like building a lot of in the board making that scheme writing to governments, to other actors, and making sure that we're all singing from the same hymn on this because it's a great.
I mean, yeah, just to clarify
Authority that covers the area according to Ellen Shear. Thank you.
And you ask development trust, Northwest 25 the second first of all, congratulations to come together and collaborate on this very big move. Should applaud for us to experience the communities that it was my question that first of all why this
can we keep them out and hold them around too much?
How much do you expect this development to accrue over this time? Others, you mentioned offshore. Are there any considerations ongoing as the industry is moving offshore with much larger turbines? And finally, there's still the interconnectors already in capacity. You're not going anywhere. You know, the hours are going to be there for as long as the rocks are around. Why are they not looking to the next stage? Because this is the future. Renewable energy is the future. And it makes no sense to not actually thinking, why is it not going to be better? So, thanks so much.
I think you have questions on this. And again, the question why?
Over. Why we got together? Well, I'll go back to when I was there when Sally started. Yeah, I did. Yeah, and we're actually looking at a full community wind farm for the whole of Lewis, and that, for one reason or another, fell apart. But the ones on the west side, which are three estates, decided that we'd stay together and look to see where we could put it. And because of all the clauses that Donald spoke about for Barbas and Chàrlabhaigh, Ghabhsainn suggested that they would look their estate to see where they could set one, which is what they did and where we have identified the area to be now. So that was really why we got together. We wanted to, it all came out of wanting a community wind farm on the island that was big enough to help the most of the island. So for our population, there's probably just over 1,000 down the whole west side households. So it's there's a lot of people to look after.
Thanks. And do you have any figures yet on kind of accrual? And do you have any ideas yet on finding those revenue back? And do you expect yet to find it? Not just the people.
Yeah, so there's a couple of issues in there. I think I was at an event a few months ago and somebody was remarking how community renewables don't generally have business plans really, because there are so many unknowns, and that's where we are really. We have lots of modelling, we have lots of figures to show this happens and that happens, and this combination of things happens. You might get this, you might get that. So at the moment, there's a whole spectrum of things in terms of the financial modelling. So you could go potentially from gross revenue of 8 million on a bad day to gross revenue of 14 million if things really work in your favour. In terms of the net income, it could be anything between 0, which is so maybe rethink the whole thing, or it could be 4 million. So if you start talking about numbers and you look at what the income from the turbines was in the first round, basically in Lewis 10 years ago and other areas as well, then it would sort of work out roughly about 4 million a year. But I think the reality will be somewhere in the middle. Who knows where exactly? There's been projects which have happened without any public annual monies in them. In other words, no revenue schemes used or support. And the other option is that you find somebody who will buy the power off you under contract. So there is that option out there. So we don't even know at the moment which option will work. And I would assume we'll go at the moment thinking that we end up in this auction and putting a bid in and trying to compete with other schemes which are probably much larger, than we are. I think the grid question you asked about, if you go back, one of the things mentioned in other events has been that renewables in Lewis has got a history going back a long number of years. So you go back to 2001, I think it was. I remember going to an event where Brian Wilson introduced MacKinnon, who were going to do a wind farm across the whole of the island of Lewis almost, and the power was going to be taken to Hunterston by cable. So that was the starting point. And then we've had so many different options since then. So actually some of these developers have been around waiting in the queue for 10 years in some cases. They've had their finance and their consents, I think, for quite a number of years as well. So there's been pent up demand there. And then when we've had the Scotland offshore round, that's brought in an additional huge number of turbines as well. So there's an additional 900 megawatts, I think, or something like that. So you can see how this gets used up quickly. And I think we just felt that we had to move in that moment, because if we waited any longer, we might have ended up in another arrangement which is not that healthy, which is basically that you wait in the queue till there's space available and you only get short notice, and then you're allowed on, and you can generate for maybe a day or a week or a month, which in terms of getting the financing of the project probably wouldn't work.
We're going to come now, bring the microphone down the front if you can, Ross, thank you. So this project is, I'm going to say a big understatement here and say that this is not a small undertaking, this project. And it takes drive, it takes determination, but it also takes ambition and a healthy risk appetite, which many people maybe don't believe that communities have or haven't seen it before. And you have here on the panel today, you do genuinely have the 3 key staff members who have the knowledge and who have really moved this forward. But behind that, there are also the boards of directors that have taken those risk decisions and backed this. And I know all 3 of these organisations have boards that put in a lot of time and energy and have supported this work. So I'm just going to ask if either of the 2 board members who are here from those boards would like to give us a small reflection before we close.
What I would say is the key to all of this is the word community. These are 3 community-owned states that have got together. They've stayed together. I know Churchill was when we started this many years ago with looking at an island wine situation. The whole thing can change, and the states are broken up, and the views are broken up. The 3 community-owned states on West Urras stuck together and got through to this. The other thing I would say with regards to community is that someone keep touching on 4 the offshore situation, where there is element of resentment on the west side of this development because of the scale. But on the balance of that is that this project is considered as community owned, and because of our community owned, there is support for this project throughout the 3 state areas. So it is challenging, but there's a huge opportunity behind it. And I would say that generally most is better, but what this does, it just gives other communities a huge opportunity. And we have these 3 gentlemen in front of you are the experts. Someone touched on taking experts out to do projects at the previous workshop I was at. An expert only becomes an expert when they're listening to what the community want. So with that, I close, but the key to the whole thing is this word community.
Carola, would you like to?
Do I have any intelligence? Fully, Kenny, everything you said, so perhaps I'll just reflect a little on the size of it. It is a huge undertaking. I actually remember when Goldston were putting up the 3 turbines, and I signed the bank loan for £5 million. And I'd been involved in a lot of community things over the years, but never been involved in a loan. It was always grants, and I'd certainly never thought of signing off for £5 million. And I suppose if this happens quickly enough, I might be involved in signing off for a lot more with this one. But to do that,
you have to, in a way, not be too risk averse, can you? You have to say, we have to try and go for this. And the thing to understand is it may well not happen, as renewable energy projects often don't. And you need a certain amount of funds, which large companies and corporations have, to take you to the point where it becomes more of a certainty. The 73 million doesn't worry me at all, because when we get to that point, banks will be ready to give us the loan. It's the £1 million to get there. Ghabhsainn are very lucky. We've had a good income now since our turbines started generating our 3 turbines, and we're able to actually fund a little bit of that, but I don't think we can fund all of it. So we do need that support. And I honestly think most organisations think there's no way 3 little communities in the Western Isles could do that. And so it's kind of discounted. But on the other side of it, we proved we can do it fast. We've done it. And having done it makes us confident. And we will. I believe we will do this. But as you can tell by my voice, I'm not totally sure of that. You need confidence. You need confidence, and you need to take risks. If we hadn't taken risk last time, we couldn't be considering this. And the trust that has grown between these 3 community organisations is excellent. I almost feel now that we're one community land trust, not 3. And that, if the project fails, that is worth everything.
And on that note, I'm going to say thank you to our 3 panel speakers. Thank you to our 2 spotlight speakers in the audience. Thank you to all of you for joining. Thanks to everyone online. And yeah, good luck with the project.